What would you do if you woke up one morning, stepped outside with your cup of coffee, and found a bright orange violation notice duct taped to the thing you love most about your home? Not your lawn, not your mailbox. No, the little barn your granddad built with his own two hands. The one where your kids played hide and seek, where family photos hung crooked on the walls. And the paper says, remove within 30 days. Fine $100 per day until resolve. That's how my war with the HOA began. My name's Daniel Harris. Folks around Cedar Glen just call me Dan. I'm a 56. Work construction most of my life. And I've got sawdust in my veins. My wife, Claire, teaches at the elementary school down the road. Our two kids are grown, but they still come home every Thanksgiving to eat too much pie and complain about politics at the table. And sitting at the edge of our lot, half shaded by pecan trees, is the old red barn my grandfather built in 1962. He wasn't rich, but he was stubborn. He cut the cedar posts himself, hauled stone from the creek bed, and hammered the roof until his back gave out. It's not big, not fancy, but it's solid. Smells like hay and oil. Hums with memories. That barn's been more than storage. It's been a playhouse, a workshop, a storm shelter, and a backdrop for every family photo we've taken in the last 50 years. It's the heartbeat of this land. But apparently, according to the Standards Committee, it was non-compliant. Cedar Glen used to be the kind of neighborhood where folks borrow sugar without writing IOUs. We had potlucks, block parties, kids' baseball games at the park. Sure, there were rules. Keep your grass cut. Don't block driveways, but they were neighborly rules. Not weapons. Then came Brenda. And Lord, if you could picture an HOA queen, she was it. Always in heels. Always with a folder under her arm. Always talking about community branding. She moved into the biggest house at the end of the cul-de-sac and ran for president before her boxes were even unpacked. She smiled like a realtor and swung that gavel like it was Thor's hammer. Under her. Cedar Glen changed. Suddenly, Christmas lights had removal dates. Trash cans had visibility standards. We even got a memo about uniform mailbox styles. And when folks complained, she cooed. It's all about protecting property values. What she really meant was control. And when she saw my granddad's barn, all weathered cedar and chipped red paint, she decided it didn't fit her vision. The letter came in May. Notice of violation structure, non-conforming storage facility barn, findings exterior inconsistent with Cedar Glen aesthetics, directive remove or replace within 30 days. Penalty, $100 per day until resolved. I read it 3 times. Hands shaking. Remove my grandfather's barn, the place my dad taught me to whittle, where Claire and I danced the night before our wedding. Not a chance in hell. I stormed into the next board meeting, letter in hand. Brenda sat at the front, gavel in reach, flanked by board members who nodded at every word she said like bobbleheads. This barn predates your HOA. I said, laying down old photos, tax records, even the original deed. It's safe. It's solid. And it's part of Cedar Glen's history. Brenda tilted her head. Fake sweet, we appreciate your attachment, Mr. Harris. But the board has voted The structure is inconsistent with our aesthetic goals. Removal is mandatory. Aesthetic goals, I snapped. This isn't a shopping mall. It's our home. She smirked and banged the gavel. Decision final. I walked out with fury boiling in my chest. That night, sitting with Claire on the porch, I muttered, if they want to fight, they'll get one. She squeezed my hand, then let's fight. The next weeks were hell. Violation notices piled up grass half an inch too long. Ladder visible from street. Claire's garden gnome not in harmony with community style. They weren't enforcing rules. They were harassing us. But Brenda didn't count on one thing. I'm a builder. And builders know how to dig, how to shore up foundations, how to find the weak spots in any structure. And I was about to start digging into hers. The harassment kept coming like clockwork. Every week, another envelope from the HOA, another violation. Claire joked, we should frame them like wallpaper. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. Truth was, it was wearing her down. One Saturday morning, I found an orange sticker slapped on our mailbox, non-compliant color. Our mailbox had been the same shade of black for 20 years. What changed? The only thing I could figure was Brenda drove by, decided it wasn't shiny enough, and cooked up another reason to find us. That evening, Earl, my neighbor 2 houses down, wandered over with a beer in his hand. Got one of those notices too. He grumbled. Said my shed was too close to the fence. Built it in 2084. Been fine ever since. We sat on the porch, swapping stories, until Earl leaned forward and said, you know, Dan, she's not just after your barn. She's after control. And if she wins with you, the rest of us are next. I nodded slowly. Then maybe it's time we stop playing defense. I started digging into records. After 30 years in construction, I knew my way around permits and plats. Down at the county office, I found what I was looking for. The barn was listed on the original property survey, dated 1962. It predated the HOA by decades. Better yet, I found a clause buried in Cedar Glen's own bylaws. Legacy structures existing prior to the establishment of the association shall be exempt from aesthetic uniformity requirements, provided they are maintained in safe condition. There it was. My shield. I made copies, highlighted the clause bright yellow, and tucked them into a big binder Claire jokingly nicknamed the Barn Bible. The next board meeting, I walked in with that binder under my arm. Neighbors filled the seats. Earl, Evelyn with her ever-present cane. Even the Petersons, who usually kept to themselves. When my turn came, I stood tall. This barn is a legacy structure. It predates the HOA. It's maintained, and your own bylaws protect it. You don't have the authority to remove it. The room murmured. Heads turned. Brenda's smile faltered for half a second before she snapped. Our independent inspector deems it unsafe. Independent, I shot back. You mean your brother-in-law? Kevin, the guy whose inspection report is 2 paragraphs long and doesn't even spell foundation right. Gasps. A few chuckles. One board member shifted in his chair. Brenda slammed the gavel. This discussion is over. But the damage was done. People saw her bluff. That night, Claire and I sat under the pecan trees. Binder open on the picnic table. She traced a yellow highlighted clause with her finger and whispered, "Feels like hope." I nodded. Yeah, but hope's not enough. We need numbers. So we started knocking on doors. Earl came with me, bender in hand. We showed neighbors the paperwork, told them about the clause, and shared copies of the violation letters, one by one. Folks nodded, frowned, then signed the petition we carried. Some were scared. What if she finds us more? She already is, I told them. But she can't find all of us at once. By the end of the month, we had the signatures we needed to call for a recall election. The night we submitted it, Brenda's face at the meeting was priceless. Red cheeks, clenched jaw, eyes darting like a cornered cat. This petition is illegitimate, she barked. Agitators are poisoning our community. Agitators, Evelyn snapped, slamming her cane on the floor. We are this community. The room erupted in cheers. For the first time, I saw real fear in Brenda's eyes. The recall vote was set for late September, and you could feel the tension humming through Cedar Glen like power lines before a storm. Some folks whispered in driveways. Others swapped stories in the grocery aisle. Everyone knew this wasn't just about one barn. It was about whether Brenda owned the neighborhood or whether we did. In the weeks leading up to the vote, Brenda went all out. Shiny flyers landed in mailboxes, full of stock photos of smiling families and lines like protect our property values, vote stability. Vote Brenda. She even hired a photographer to stage pictures of her helping at the playground. Never mind she'd find Evelyn's grandkids for sidewalk chalk last summer. At the same time, the violations got nastier. Earl got fined for non-uniform lawn height. Evelyn was told her bird bath was a mosquito hazard. Claire got a letter claiming her flower pots were improperly arranged. It was laughable, but it wasn't funny. It was intimidation. Plain and simple. But intimidation only works if people stay quiet. And we weren't quiet anymore. Every night after dinner, I'd walk the neighborhood with Earl and Claire, binder in hand. We explained the legacy clause, showed them the bogus inspection report, and laid out how much of their dues had been funneled into consulting fees for Brenda's relatives. Little by little, folks who'd been nervous started to stiffen their spines. Miss Evelyn, bless her heart, told me, if she wants my bird bath gone, she can carry it out herself. And she better bring 2 men and a dolly, 'cause that thing's heavy. The night of the vote, the community center was packed. Folding chairs filled every corner. Neighbors stood along the walls, and you could feel the room buzzing. Brenda sat at the front, gavel resting beside her like a weapon. She wore that tight smile, but her eyes were sharp as knives. The ballots were simple. Recall, yes or no. Volunteers, not board members, handed them out and watched the box. As people dropped their slips in, I saw nods, small smiles, even the occasional thumbs up. Claire squeezed my hand. Whatever happens, she whispered, we already changed things. When the last ballot fell, the volunteers carried the box to a side table. The room went still. You could hear the rustle of papers, the whispers as they counted. Finally, the lead volunteer cleared her throat. Votes for a recall, 78. Against 23. For half a heartbeat. Silence. Then the room exploded. Cheers. Clapping. Even tears. Earl slapped my back so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Evelyn whooped and waved her cane in the air like a baton. Brenda's face turned crimson. She stood, pointed a finger straight at me, and hissed, this isn't over. You'll regret this. Then she stormed out, heels clicking like gunshots. That night, Half the neighborhood gathered at my barn. We dragged out lawn chairs, lit lanterns, and just sat. No speeches, no gavel, no threats, just laughter, pie, and the sound of the crickets mixing with the steady creak of the barn walls. Claire leaned against me and whispered, "Feels like we got our home back." I nodded, though inside, a part of me stayed braced. Because if I knew one thing about Brenda, it was this. She wasn't the type to walk away quietly. And sure enough, she didn't for about 2 weeks after the recall. Cedar Glen felt lighter. Kids chalked hopscotch grids on sidewalks again. Folks waved from porches without looking over their shoulders. And the steady hum of lawnmowers sounded more like summer than surveillance. It felt like the storm had passed. But sure enough, Brenda wasn't done. One chilly morning in October, I opened the door to find a thick envelope sitting on the mat. Inside, cord papers. She was suing me personally for defamation and emotional distress. She wanted damages, legal fees, and get this, an order for me to demolish the barn anyway. Claire read through it, then snorted. Defamation. All you did was read her own bylaws back to her. Still, the knot in my stomach tightened. It wasn't about winning. It was about wearing me down. Court date meant stress. Bills. Sleepless nights. I called Maria. The attorney who'd been advising us, she flipped through the pages, shaking her head. "This is noise. We'll file for dismissal." And she was right. At the first hearing, the judge barely skimmed the documents before declaring, "Dismissed with prejudice." Just like that. Case closed. But Brenda didn't even look at the judge. She stared at me the whole time. Eyes blazing like she could burn me down if she glared hard enough. Then she stormed out, heels cracking on the floor. I thought maybe that would cool her off. Wrong again. One night in late October, my security camera pinged. I pulled up the feed and froze. Two figures in hoodies crept along the fence line, one carrying a cordless saw. They shined a flashlight up at the barn's ladder. My heart jumped into my throat. I grabbed my spotlight, stormed it outside, and yelled, "Hey!" They bolted, dropping the saw in the grass. Their truck fishtailed gravel as it sped off, but not before the camera caught the plate number. Deputy Collins ran it the next day. Belonged to a landscaping company Brenda had hired before. Charges were filed against the two men. Brenda, of course, denied everything. But around here, nobody believed her. Word spread at the diner, at church, at the post office. Folks shook their heads, muttered curses, and suddenly Brenda's little fan club got real quiet. Meanwhile, the new board wasted no time. Carla, the new chairwoman, froze all fines until reviewed. She ordered a full audit of the budget, and when those numbers came out, jaws dropped. Consulting fees paid to Brenda's relatives. Thousands of dollars for aesthetic surveys that never happened. Money that should have gone to road repairs and park upkeep funneled into nonsense. At the December meeting, Carla stood in front of a packed room. No more fear. No more secrecy. This association works for its members, not against them. The applause nearly shook the walls. And then came the best part. The board voted to declare the Harris Barn a heritage landmark. They even ordered a bronze plaque. The day they mounted it into the stone, neighbors clapped. Evelyn cried. And Earl slapped the plaque with a grin. Ain't no HOA tearing this down now. I laid my hand on the cool metal, and for the first time since this fight began, I felt the knot in my chest loosen. But like I've said before, bullies rarely go away quiet. On a freezing night in January, Earl banged on my door, breath puffing in the air. Dan, coming quick. We ran down the trail toward the creek. The chain on the service gate by the dam had been cut clean through. Deputy Collins crouched down, flashlight on the fresh marks. This wasn't kids. He said, this was sabotage. If they'd opened that gate, the water could have dropped fast. Your barn. After shore, it all could have gone. I stood there in the icy wind, fists clenched. She's still at it. I muttered. Collins straightened, jaw tight. And now we got proof. February in Cedar Glen was colder than usual, and the air felt sharp enough to cut, but the chill outside was nothing compared to the ice that settled in my gut after seeing that cut chain on the dam gate. Deputy Collins didn't waste time. He pulled bank records, traced payments, and sure enough, money for those hired goons flowed straight from Brenda's account. The county prosecutor stepped in, and before long, Brenda was facing charges, attempted vandalism, reckless endangerment, and misuse of HOA funds. It wasn't prison time. People like her rarely see a cell, but it came with steep fines and a court order barring her from ever serving on a homeowners association board again. When the news spread, nobody cheered. Folks just sighed, like a storm had finally passed, with Brenda officially out of the picture. The board kept rolling. They didn't just patch holes. They rebuilt the foundation of what Cedar Glen was supposed to be. They set up a neighbor relief fund, using what used to be violation money to help folks with real needs, medical bills, home repairs, groceries for families short on cash. Evelyn got her porch steps fixed. Lewis's mama had her roof patched. And Earl finally replaced the mower he'd been nursing along for years. The first time the fund was announced at a meeting, Evelyn stood up, can shaking in her hand. This is what community looks like, she said, voice cracking. The whole room stood and clapped until she had to wave them down. Meanwhile, my barn transformed from a target into a symbol. The local paper ran a story, the barn that beat the HOA. They snapped photos of the red siding, the bronze plaque, even me standing out front with Claire. I thought it would be a small piece buried on page 6. Instead, it landed on the front page, and then the letters started coming. A woman from Arizona wrote, "They fined me for planting tomatoes. After hearing your fight, I started organizing my neighbors." A man from Florida, "We lost my grandfather's shed because of our HOA. Your story gave me courage to push back next time." I sat on the porch swing one night, reading those letters aloud while the barn glowed in the dusk. Claire squeezed my arm. "See, this wasn't just for us. It's bigger." By spring, the board hosted the first Cedar Glen Heritage Fair. Booths lined the park with quilts, crafts, barbecue, and stories. Families brought old photo albums. Kids painted murals. And right in the middle stood my barn, dressed up with string lights and wildflowers. When the sun set, Carla gathered everyone in front of it. "This building isn't just wood and nails," she said. "It's proof that when neighbors stand together, they can protect what matters." Then she handed me the microphone. I swallowed hard, looking out at faces, friends, neighbors, people who had stood shoulder to shoulder when fear told them to sit down. All I did, I said, voice low but steady, was refuse to tear down what my granddad built. The rest, that was all of you. You reminded me, and maybe the whole country, that home is more than property values. It's memory. It's family. And that's worth fighting for. The applause rolled through the park like thunder. That night, I sat by the barn, lantern light flickering on the red boards. I traced the old initials my granddad carved into the beam J. H. Yi qian jiu bai liu shi. My throat tightened. Granddad, I whispered, we kept it safe. It's still here, and it always will be. The boards creaked softly in the night breeze, like they were answering. But let me ask you, what would you do if your HOA came after your family's history? Would you fold under the weight of their letters and threats, or would you dig in, like cedar roots gripping the earth, until the storm broke? Because me, I dug in, and I'd do it again tomorrow. March brought green shoots poking through the soil, and for the first time in a long while, Cedar Glen felt like it was growing in more ways than one. Without Brenda breathing down our necks, neighbors started living again. Kids raced bikes down the street without anyone snapping pictures for evidence. Folks left porch swings painted whatever color they pleased. Evelyn even added a second bird bath in her yard, just because she could. When I teased her about it, she tapped her cane and said, if they want this one gone too, they can pry it from my cold hands. The whole block laughed. The board, under Carla's steady hand, rolled out something brand new. Neighbor days, no minutes, no gavels, no intimidation. Just Saturdays at the park with food, music, and people. Earl fired up his smoker, filling the air with brisket, so tender it melted in your mouth. Luis painted kids' faces with wild patterns, stars, and dragons. Evelyn told old stories under the shade tree while kids played tag around her chair. It wasn't about rules anymore. It was about remembering we were a community first. And the barn, it became the centerpiece of everything. Photographers came to take pictures, calling it the barn that wouldn't fall. Couples posed for engagement photos in front of it. Things snapped graduation shots. And once, a family asked if they could hold a birthday party inside. Claire baked the cake, and I swept the floor spotless, just so they feel welcome. Every time I walked past that bronze plaque, I thought about how close we'd come to losing it, and how many hands had held it upright when I couldn't carry the weight alone. Then, in May, a letter arrived in the mail. This time, not from a HOA, not from Brenda, but from the State Historical Commission. They'd reviewed Carla's nomination and wanted to recognize the Harris Barn as a state historic site. Claire read the letter out loud twice, tears in her eyes. I just sat there staring at it. The words, swimming, feeling like my granddad's callous hand was on my shoulder again. The ceremony was scheduled for June. On the day, the park overflowed. Kids waved flags. Families spread blankets on the grass, and the brass band played under the pecan trees. The barn stood tall, dressed in lights and wildflowers, red boards gleaming like fresh paint, even though they were decades old. Officials gave speeches, but the moment that stuck was when they unveiled the plaque. Harris Barn, built 1962, preserved as a state historic landmark. The crowd cheered, and I swear the sound rolled out across the ridge like thunder. Evelyn cried openly. Earl tipped his hat to the sky. Louise hollered so loud, people in the next county might have heard. When they handed me the microphone, I swallowed hard and said, "This barn isn't just mine. It's ours." It's proof that when neighbors stand together, no bully can take away what families build with love. The applause shook the ground. That night, I sat on the steps of the barn with Claire beside me. Lanterns still glowed faintly. One fireflies danced, and the boards creaked like they'd joined the celebration. "You know," Claire said softly, "Brenda tried to tear this place apart, but all she did was bring us closer." I nodded. She woke us up. And here's the truth. Life didn't become perfect. Bills still came. Roofs still leaked. And weeds still grew faster than grass. But the fear was gone. And in its place was something stronger: trust, laughter, resilience. Because Cedar Glen had remembered who it really was. July in Cedar Glen was hot enough to fry an egg on the sidewalk. But the mood was brighter than ever. For once, the heat wasn't coming from arguments at HOA meetings. It was just the Texas sun doing what it always does. The board kept things moving. They launched a community tool shed program where neighbors could borrow lawnmowers, ladders, or power tools instead of being fined for not owning the right kind. Folks lined up to sign out weed whackers with smiles on their faces. Luis, ever the helpful kid, volunteered to keep the logbook. He looked proud as a banker handling loans. Meanwhile, people began dropping by the barn just to see it. Not just Cedar Glen neighbors, folks from surrounding towns too. Some took photos. Others just stood quietly with hands on the cedar posts like they were touching history. I didn't mind. That barn had always belonged to more than just me. In August, we held the second Heritage Festival. The park buzzed with energy, tables stacked with pies, quilts strung up on clotheslines, a fiddler sawing through old tunes while kids ran barefoot in the grass. And right in the middle stood the barn, decorated with banners painted by children. When night fell, lanterns lit the path up to it. Carla gave a short speech, then pressed the mic into my hands. I looked out at the crowd, neighbors who had become family, faces glowing in the lantern light, in my throat tightened. This barn isn't just wood and nails. I say it. It's memory. It's proof that no fine, no threat, no bully can erase what we love. We fought and we stood, and we're still standing. And if you ever face your own fight, remember, home is worth it. The applause rolled like thunder. Claire squeezed my arm. Your granddad would be grinning ear to ear. I swallowed hard and whispered back, I think he already is. But life had one more twist in store. In September, glossy brochures showed up in our mailboxes. A developer from Dallas was pushing plans for a luxury lakeside resort just a mile from Cedar Glen. Their photos showed fake families sipping wine on decks that didn't exist yet. At the next meeting, tension simmered. Some folks feared traffic and noise. Others worried about losing the quiet we just reclaimed. Carla spoke steady. We've been through this before. We know how to stand together. If they think they can steamroll us, they've got another thing coming. Earl grunted from the back. If they want to pave paradise, they'll have to go through me first. The room erupted in cheers. That night, sitting on the barn steps, I stared at the bronze plaque gleaming faintly in the moonlight. We'd won one war, and maybe another loomed on the horizon. But this time, I wasn't afraid. We had each other now. And sometimes, that's all you need. So let me ask you, what would you do if your HOA or a developer or anyone told you to erase your family's history? Would you roll over or would you stand tall? Even when your knees shook until the fight was done. Me, I stood, and I'll keep standing as long as these cedar beams stand beside me. October rolled in with cool mornings and leaves scattering across the sidewalks. For the first time in a long while, Cedar Glen felt steady, like the ground had finally stopped shaking under our feet. The board kept neighbor days alive. Kids still dashed across lawns without fear. And the barn, well, it wasn't just mine anymore. It was ours. Folks treated it like the town square, stopping to talk, leaning on the posts while swapping stories, even tying balloons to the gate for birthdays. One Saturday, a young couple I barely knew knocked on my door. Mr. Harris, the woman asked nervously, could we take our wedding pictures in front of the barn? I grinned. Of course. That's what it's here for. And just like that, the old red cedar beams became part of someone else's story too. In November, the State Historic Commission sent one more surprise. They wanted to feature the barn in their annual calendar. Claire nearly dropped the letter into her soup when she read it out loud. Dan, she laughed, eyes shining. Your granddad's barn is going to be hanging in kitchens all across Texas. I felt my throat tighten. Guess he finally got famous. The official unveiling of the calendar took place at the county courthouse in December. They handed me a copy, glossy and new, with June's page showing my barn against the golden sunset. Neighbors crowded around, clapping me on the back, snapping photos like it was their own victory, which, in truth, it was. I stood there holding that calendar, and for the first time, the fight felt complete. Christmas Eve. Neighbors gathered again at the barn. Lights strung along the roofline glowed soft against the cedar. Kids sipped hot chocolate, and carols floated into the crisp night air. Claire leaned against me, her hand slipping into mine. Look around. Dan, we've got more than a barn. We've got a community again. I nodded, eyes stinging. We almost lost it, but we fought, and now it's stronger than ever. And here's the truth. I carry now, life will always throw storms, HOAs, developers, bullies in nice shoes, but storms pass. What lasts are the things built with love, stubbornness, and memory. So I'll leave you with this question. If your HOA demanded you tear down the thing that holds your family's history, would you fold or would you stand? Even shaking until the blades of justice cut through the nonsense. Me, I stood, and every creak of these old cedar beams still says at plain stand.